If you had to make a list of words and phrases deeply linked with the nation of Australia, it would probably feature the likes of bonza, stroof, fair dinkum, babby, get a dog up here, don't get in the kiln, a bum with a fist coming out of it, democracy manifest, and grab that gem. But undoubtedly, the single word that would be at the top of that list would be none other than the simple 4-letter word of mate. Mate, often preceded with a simple g'day, is perhaps the quintessential Australian phrase, and the one most linked with the nation, its people, and their variety of English. And while it might seem incredibly stereotypical to say it's something all Australians say, that is seemingly actually the case. Unlike many other stereotypes found around the world, there's evidence online, like Reddit threads on the subject, that confirm it's incredibly commonly heard down under. And seemingly in Australia, it's an incredibly flexible word too. You can refer to a close friend as a mate, but can also say it to the person scanning your food at the supermarket. This all shows us that mate is the word most linked with Australia. And it would be insane if the word ever faded from the country. But what would be even more crazy is if somehow the word got banned in Australia. Well, guess what? They did ban the word of mate. Once. Kind of. We'll get to it. Yeah, despite the fact I've called this video something like that time Australia banned the word mate, this video is actually a wider look into the word in the country and how it came to be so linked to Australia. If you want to know about the time they banned it like I imply in the title of this video, skip to the time on the screen right now. But for everyone sticking around, while mate is perhaps now most linked with Australia, the word of course didn't have its origins in the country. The chief language of Australia is of course English, specifically that unique form of Aussie English. And while they have made the tongue their own, ultimately English has its origins on the island of Great Britain, specifically in the area that we now call England. This means that the word of mate too began life on this island. And of course we still use it fairly frequently here too, and it's commonly heard in other forms of English. Though American English doesn't seem to be too hot on it. They seem to prefer buddy or dude or whatever. But back to mate. The word has its origins with the Proto-Germanic term of gamation. This meant something quite different to just being friends or chummy with someone. It specifically meant someone you have food with, which to this day is something good mates still do fairly often. The latter part of this word, where mate ultimately comes from, derived from the Proto-Germanic matiz, which means meat. So more specifically, gamation means people who eat meat together. And yes, logically it means that when you're calling someone mate, you are kind of calling them meat. But once again, is there truly a better bond and experience than just eating a bunch of meat together? From Proto to Middle German, the word became gamete, which meant people who eat at the same table. And by the time it arrived in English, it was just mate, and the eating connotations of the word had disappeared and it just meant people who were good friends. The earliest evidence we have on mate being used in this way in English comes from the late 14th century, so we've been calling people mate for a seriously long time. And for those curious, mate, as in someone you produce children with, which is also used as a verb, comes directly from this kind of mate too, but came later in around the 16th century. The mate in checkmate meanwhile does come from a completely different root, deriving from the Persian word of mata, meaning to die, which makes sense as when you checkmate someone in chess you are killing their piece, at least I think so anyway. Honestly I've never played chess. But from here on the island of Britain, mate became a go-to term for friends, and it was mainly linked to a very specific group of people, those being mainly male and of a working class background. It could be heard in the fields, in the markets, and of course in the pub. To this day, mate is still seen as being linked mainly with men and more with working class people here in the UK. You'd be surprised to hear someone like the late Queen Elizabeth II, someone who was the complete opposite of being male and working class, referred to someone as mate, in example. King Charles III would probably call someone mate, but it would only be in a weird attempt for some good publicity and to appear like a regular human or something. It's through working class men that mate found its way across the globe. First it would have been seen on boats in the Navy, which gave us terms like first mate. And of course, it's through these men that it arrived in Australia too. It's no real secret that the modern nation of Australia was heavily formed by how the British used the land. And of course, to the British, when they claimed Australia in 1788, they mainly used it as a penal colony, somewhere to dump convicts from the UK, to get them away from home and put them to use, working the harsh land of Australia. While I'm on board with the stereotype of Australians using mate, I'm not as keen on the stereotype of all Australians being descendants of convicts. Australia getting this image is a byproduct of the situation in Britain at the time. The Industrial Revolution brought with it a new level of poverty the country had never seen before. People lost their jobs to machines and turned to petty crime. The UK government reacted harshly to these desperate people just trying to survive, throwing them in prison and eventually shipping them off to Australia. It's actually a story I go into way more detail in my latest book, Immigrant Tongues, in the Australian English chapter. Go read it if you want to know more. There'll be a link to buy it down below. But regardless of the finer details, Australia found itself full of British convicts. And of course, a large majority of these British convicts would have fit into that category of being male and working class. This would have meant that mate would have been a key part of all of their lexicons. These were men brought to Australia from all across the UK. It's highly unlikely they would have known each other prior to their arrival in the land. Yet through the hardship of life down under, varying degrees of kinship would have formed. And not long after that, these men would have been talking to one another the same way they did back in Blighty, and calling one another mate. As some of the earliest European settlers in the country were people who would have regularly called one another mate, it's no major surprise to hear the word took off so well in the nation. What's interesting is that in Australia, mate became way more than just a greeting or a shorthand term for a friend. It became a term that unified many people in the land. By calling each other mate, it gave the impression that no one was above anyone else. They were all just mates. Whenever someone claims Australia is a country founded by convicts, I'm instead going to say no, it was a country founded by mates. That just has a way nicer ring to it. Mate found its way to Australia through these men who were sent to the land against their will, and here, like them, it found a home. This happened in the late 18th and early 19th century, but things would pick up hugely for mate as the 19th century progressed. This was through the Australian gold rush, which started in 1851. When news came out that the land was rich in this precious mineral, it led to even more British working class men finding their way down under, this time out of their own volition as opposed to being sent there against their will. This would have meant even more people using the word mate found themselves in the land. By 1901, Australia found independence from the United Kingdom, and by this point a unique Australian identity had emerged, along with Aussie English, and the key use of the word mate. From here, mate went from a term used by working class men of Australia to something of a cultural identifier in the nation. It became used by other people like politicians, and even found itself as a key identifier for the country to the wider world. It's through all of this as to how mate became, for all intents and purposes, Australia's word. It would be crazy to think of an Australia where the word was banned, but as I hinted towards at the start of this video, that almost happened. Oh, hello if you skip forward to this part of the video. Man, you missed an absolute hoot. Man, go back maybe if you want to. I don't know, it's up to you. But anyway, the banning of this word took place in the archaic, ancient year of 2005. Yeah, in my head it feels like that was 7 years ago or something, but no, it's 20. You may be watching this video and not have even been born by 2005. That's wild. But in this year, a small piece of emerged from the country, which made headlines around the world. Most of those headlines read something along the lines of, Australia bans the word mate, but in reality, it actually wasn't that dramatic. The word did get banned in the country, but it was a very specific ban. The entire country wasn't forbidden from saying it. Instead, it was just the security guards at the Australian Parliament building. It was discovered that these guards had been referring to politicians and other higher-ups as mate. This seems to have angered some civil servants who worked in Parliament, as they thought that the guards calling people mate was not professional. This led to the word being banned for these guards, and it was insisted they call people sir or madam. This really should have been a small bit of bureaucracy, but the fact the event could be summed up in the words Australia banned the word mate allowed it to become a fully fledged story in not just Australia, but the wider world, thanks to the burgeoning internet of 2005. People would have been reading about this between watching Strong Bad Emails or something. This led to the country of Australia, as well as the wider world, completely dunking on this banning. Then Aussie PM John Howard said the ban was absurd. He was a big fan of the word, even calling then US President George W. Bush mate when they met. Likewise, opposition leader Kim Beazley said that not to call people mate is un-Australian. It really became a non-partisan phenomenon in the country, and a good excuse to score some political points seemingly. The wider world even took jabs at the event too, with the Global Language Monitor placing the banning of the word mate in their tongue-in-cheek list of the 10 most politically correct phrases of 2005. Fun fact, but the term shower thought was also put on this list too. It was seen as a silly replacement for brainstorming, but 20 years later it's actually become a really commonly used term. This ban was put in place on the 19th of August 2005, and it lasted all the way until later that day. Yeah, the universal backlash this news received led to the ban being lifted in less than 24 hours. And to this day, seemingly the guards at the Aussie Parliament can call people mate without fear of being scolded by any higher-ups. So yes, Australia did once ban their most popular word, but in reality it was only for a select few people in one building, and the ban lasted no longer than a day. It's a silly little story, but in the same way Australia banned the word mate, made for a great headline in 2005, it also makes for a great YouTube video name 20 years later. But beyond this, the story of mate in Australia is one of deep importance. It can show us the impact a single word can have on a nation. It began life as a simple word used by people sent to the country against their will, and from there it blossomed into the ubiquitous word of Australia that it is still today. Good on you, mate. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm Name Explain YT, and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.